Hello, and thank you guys for tuning in. As I am polishing up the script for Druid's Rune 4, I thought I would put up another story that I was told as a child. This one is called The Raven's Bride, and it's kind of hard to place these stories about how they're supposed to happen, but this one definitely happens after the events of The Raven Steals the Fire story, so I thought I would go ahead and record it. And it sounds like this. Since I did the first story outside, I'm going to do this story outside. I'm underneath my pine tree right by my crossroads. And something I forgot to mention is that the crossroads that are right out from my house, on the other side of the intersection, there's a church. So there's also Holy Ground nearby. So those of you that are into like the whole American hoodoo thing, that's kind of like, ooh, power place. But anyway, okay, so here we go. The Raven's Bride. In the years after Raven had done his deed for man, he lived on the edges of society of animals and men. He took from man's fields, took from his houses, any shiny trinkets, anything that seemed beautiful, and snuck it back to his nest. He stole from other animals, he stole from the corpses of the fallen, gorging himself. And since he never felt he had enough, whenever he would encounter food, he would always gorge, eat. His theory being that since he was not sure when his next meal would come, he better enjoy everything to the full extent that he could. Raven's children, taking after their father, as all children take after their parents, emulated this behavior, and soon there were so many ravens that food barely stayed on the ground, carrion that is, and crops barely were allowed to ripen, and there wasn't enough food coming in, not only for the hunters and for the scavengers, but for the men in the fields growing their crops. And something had to be done. So the man that originally had spoken with Raven when Raven was still white decided he would try to seek out Raven again, and he brought his daughter with him. He told his daughter, "Daughter of mine, I made a promise many years ago to a white bird, and knowing that that white bird bringing us fire to keep us alive was in fact the same, I tried to trick him to our advantage that I might keep you. But now his revenge is so terrible that I fear I must give you up and hope he will be abated. But I will not do this if you are not willing, for I cannot stand to be parted from you by force." And the daughter said, "Father, for the good of all, if it will abate his anger, I will happily marry Raven. There are worse matches, and no one ever guaranteed us a happy life. But no life at all, death, is not preferable to a life of hardship and toil." So the two people set out, and they began searching for Raven. But Raven's children were so numerous at this point that it was hard to find the Raven the man had spoken with. They stopped from tree to tree, from kill to kill, and asked the ravens, "Are you Raven?" And the ravens, not really having names of their own, all said, "Well, of course we are." But to the man, who remembered keenly the raven's voice, the voice was never right. And so he began asking, "Well, where is the first raven? Where is your father?" And eventually the ravens all began to point him towards the edge of a forested mountainside. Give me 1 second, we got a car coming. Okay, car is passed. Back to the story. So eventually they came to a lonely mountain range. A lonely forest on the edge of a mountain. And there they discovered in a wood, very forgotten and very lonely, almost soundless except for the bugs, the nesting place of the raven. He had made his roost on the top of a very tall tree. And at the top of the tall tree, he had put foreboding things to prevent any from coming up to his nest. Thorny plants, spikes, sharp shells he had embedded into the bark of the tree to prevent people from climbing. The man cried out to the top of the tree, "Raven, Raven, are you there?" From the top of the tree they heard a caw, "Go away." "Raven, Raven, please speak with us." The raven called again, "Go away, cheat thief, liar." The man called a third time, "Raven, Raven, please, I am sorry for the trick I played on you earlier. I have come to make amends. I have brought my greatest treasure, my daughter, who I loved more than my life. Please, come and speak with us." Upon hearing that the man had brought his daughter, Raven peered out over the edge of the nest, and seeing the two people, began to think of what new trick man was trying to play on him, for Raven had learned to distrust men in all of their dealings. But the daughter was not a man, she was a woman. And perhaps, just perhaps, she would prove more trustworthy than her father. So Raven said, "I do not trust you, man, for you have cheated me. But the girl has not yet done me any wrong. Therefore I give her the chance to make up for your misdeed. If she will climb this tree to come speak with me, I will entreat with her." The man turned to his daughter, and the daughter said, "Surely I will climb." And so up the tree she went, bit by bit, branch by branch, nimbly making her way until she got to the sharp shells. And here she had a problem. She cried out to Raven, "Lord Raven, I wish to come see you, but there are barriers in the way. There are sharp shells that might cut my hands and make me fall." And Raven said to her back, "I have put those there to keep predators from coming and getting my children, to breaking the eggs that I have here. The young birds yet to be born, I cannot remove them. You will have to go around them." The girl nimbly and carefully made her way around the sharp shells, but on some of them she was cut. It was unavoidable, he had placed so many guarding. She then came to the area of the thorny plants and said, "Lord Raven, there are thorny bushes and plants and vines in my way. I wish to come see you, but I cannot make any progress." The raven peered down, and seeing that the girl had braved the shells, even though she had been slightly injured, he began to trust her a little more, and so he said, "I have put the ivy vines and the thorny bushes there, that none may enter and come and attack my nest, where the eggs are and the young birds have yet to be born. And I cannot remove them, but I will teach you a trick for getting around them." And so Raven flew down and showed her how to grip the vines in such a manner that the thorns would not pierce her. And the girl, paying very careful attention, made her way across the vines and the thorny branches, and was only pierced a couple of times in her carelessness when her attention slipped, but never seriously. Finally she came to an area of the tree right below the nest, where the branches had been bowed down to prevent people from coming up the tree. And she said, "Lord Raven, I wish to come see you, but there are branches blocking the way." And Raven said to her, now trusting her, seeing her effort, "I have put that there that none may climb up into the nest itself, giving them another barrier to protect the eggs and the birds not yet born. But since you have proven to me that you are willing to bear anything, I will fly down and carry you up this last measure." And so Raven did exactly that, placing the girl upon his back and flying her up to the nest where she was safe. At the top of the nest the girl saw many eggs that had been laid, and there Raven sat, and on these eggs there was no mother bird keeping them warm. And the girl said to Raven, "How is it possible that your children are hatched in such manner?" And Raven said, "For those that believe, many things are possible, and for those that are ancient, there are many works not commonly available to those that are in ignorance. Now, your father has sent you here to entreat with me. What is it he wishes?" The daughter said to the raven, "Your children have multiplied so greatly that my father's people cannot survive, nor is there any food long upon the ground, nor can the other beasts who are used to scavenging make their food. You are causing others to suffer because there are too many of your children. Please, Lord Raven, isn't there something you can do?" Oh, car going by, hold on. And Raven said to her, "Truly my children have gained in number, but that is what all do. All gain in number, all seek to make more of themselves, all seek to survive. You cannot fault me for wanting my children to live." And the girl said in return, nor can you fault man for wanting his children to live." Raven responded, "But man has proven duplicitous, man has proven to be a liar and a cheat." The girl responded back to Raven, "Man does not have the ability of flight like you and your children do. He cannot flee when there is no food. Man does not have a sharp beak or strong claws with which to carry food away, or to pierce the hard shells or the hard nuts. Man has no weapons except his mind. Can you fault him for using what nature has given him?" And Raven turned his head to the side and again regarded the daughter. She had proven not only to be brave and cooperative, but also to be insightful and well-spoken. So Raven tried one last thing. "I sense your father will ask me to move all of my children away. That is unacceptable. I cannot see all, or even most, nor should any parent see some of their children die. What exactly is it you think we should do?" The girl regarded Raven. Except for her father, the people had not asked her opinion, and her father not until the moment before they had to come to see Raven in desperation. And she said, "I think it would be best if we could all find some way that all of us could live. There must be something you can do." There must be some way you can reduce the number of your children or send them away from my father's people without causing them harm." Raven regarded her and began to think, and then said, "My children have already learned that man can be dangerous, for in the fields you throw rocks at us, and you do other things to try to trap us and scare us off. I will return you to your father, and you will give him the idea of placing men in the fields made of straw or sticks, and they will scare away those of my children that are not wise enough to realize that they are not real. That way, you keep your fields, and I keep my strong children, and those children of mine that are slow of wing or slow of wit will fly off some other place and thrive there away from your kind." The daughter, feeling that that was not what her father would want, tried to press the advantage and said, "What if these straw men scare all, and I be your bride?" And Raven began to consider that and the girl again in a new light, and finally said, "I will give you a way to make the men more scary, but my individual children may prove more resistant, so I cannot guarantee all of their behavior." And the girl said in return, "I cannot guarantee all of men's behavior either. He will not try to kill your children in return." They both hemmed and hawed, went back and forth, and the discussion lasted many days until finally they struck upon a compromise that both felt, although it did not make them happy, was livable. The compromise was that Raven would give to man tools to scare his children away, with no expectation that the men wouldn't try to kill children that went too far over the mark. And man, in return, would expect that Raven's children would continue to multiply and occasionally besiege his fields. And that was upon man to drive them away, and not on Raven to control them. In return, the woman would stay and become Raven's bride, to which she agreed. He flew her back down the tree to see to her father and tell her father the conditions of the deal. It wasn't very long until after that Raven's children soon began to decrease in number around the villages of men and prefer the wilds, as the men placed the markers out in the fields. And this relationship went on so far and so well that, by the time of Elijah the prophet, ravens were willing to feed men when he was needed. Now that's the end of the story. And things about my family you need to understand is that my family was unique. They were a very interesting mix of Pentecostal Christians and at the same time kind of a Native American look on things. And so their stories they told us got kind of jumbled. Now this was a story that clearly was told to me, and it has no tribal derivative. I have no doubt that this is just a family story of my own. And it was definitely my family's attempt to try to turn the other things we had read and learned, from other sources into the biblical narrative. Hence the including of Elijah in the scene in the Bible where the ravens bring Elijah, I think it's Elijah, bring him meat to keep him fed while he's in hiding. And a lot of my family stories were like that. And I bring that up because here in the United States, particularly the continental United States, many of us that have had theological problems with Christianity have a knee-jerk negative emotional reaction to it that I no longer have. When I first started considering, oh, really? Another car? Okay, guys, sorry. I'm just going to keep recording this, and you may hear the car over me. When I made the switch from Judeo-Christianity to my current set of practices and beliefs, there was a period of time where I felt really bad, where I was really fearful. Am I going to burn in hell? Is my family going to turn against me? Am I going to be accepted? Can I not talk about my religion around other people? Yada, yada, yada. But the more I got to looking into particularly Appalachian folklore, that is all there. They just don't like admitting where it came from. And even in Orthodox Christianities, the adoption of pagan motifs and pagan stories are there. I mean, come on. What do you think St. Patrick driving the snakes out of Ireland was supposed to be about, right? What do you think the various saints and the various feast days and stuff from the saints all originally came from. That's originally kind of a pagan practice, particularly in Germanic cultures where you had the whole wagon culture with the effigy of the goddess being carted from village to village upon the wane. So I no longer have the knee-jerk reaction against stories trying to blend the Judeo-Christian account of morality and the spiritual world with the pagan one. A good example of this is if you read the Book of Invasions for the Book of Invasions of Ireland. The very beginning of the piece starts off with the authors trying to link the biblical flood account to the timeline that they want to establish with the Nemed and the Firbolg and all those people coming to Ireland. And they did this because at the time the books are written down, it's a Christian author in the monastery recording it, and he wants to give his audience some frame of reference. And that's one of the things I guess I should talk about actually on a Druid Rune podcast, but it seems to me that when we as modern people are telling these fables and parables and spiritual stories, since we are the product of many different cultures blending, it is permissible and indeed probably beneficial for us to blend those kind of accounts so that the audience hearing it can make an emotional connection to it and put it into a framework that they can relate to. Wow, this podcast is going longer than I thought. I'm already at 16 minutes recording. Woo! Okay, so about this one. Things about the story that I really liked. The first thing I noticed about the story was the idea of the tree. There's a very common thing in many shamanic stories about having to scale up to a spiritual experience. And you usually see this by someone going up a tree or up a mountain. The thing I thought was interesting about this story is that the tree has barriers. And the threefold barriers on the tree represent very much how I foresee working with spiritual beings. The first barrier is the sharp shells. And the sharp shells are kind of interesting in that if the tree is a general metaphor for the spirit, the shells are kind of a thing for the water, or what in classic Celtic elements would be the sea. They're sharp, they're formerly living, they're bone, they're ancient, there's lots of associations that can be drawn. But the main thing is that they're sharp and that they are non-discriminatory and that there's no way for the seeker to get around them without getting cut. And when I tell this story now, I kind of compare that to the recognition that when you start spiritual work, you're going to encounter emotional things and things buried very deep and hidden that have been biting you in the butt, and you just were never aware of them until suddenly you have to deal with them. So occasionally you're going to get cut. And this may be friendships lost, it may be opportunities lost, it may be while you're trying to raise your consciousness and your level of being, having to deal with some crap you really would rather not, but it's got to happen. The next level is the thorny plants and vines, which are kind of a symbol of the earth, or in the Celtic cosmology of the traditional three elements of the land. And it's interesting that Raven, when he first sees the girl coming up the tree, he doesn't trust her at all, but he's impressed that she's willing to go through the pain. And so when she comes to the second barrier, he's not willing to help her. I should rephrase it. He's not willing to remove the barrier, but he is willing to help her get across it. And so he informs her how to do it if she concentrates. And except for a couple of times when her attention slips, she makes it through without any injuries. I see this one as a metaphor for the getting by in your daily life, the having to make your spiritual life blend with your physical experience, and how to do that, and how if you pay careful attention you won't have any problems, but if you don't, there's going to be some interesting things that occur. Another car at 2 in the morning? What in the world is going on today? Holy cow. Okay, continue with the story. The last and final barrier is got the car going by. The last and final barrier is are the branches pointed down, so it's impossible to climb up into the nest. And this one would be, since it's the very top of the tree and the top of the crown, this would be the air element or the sky in the traditional Celtic three-part thing. And by the time the seeker has gone through the first two barriers, at this point Raven now trusts her because she can see the effort, he can see the intention, he can see the emotional thing, the emotional maturity of the seeker. And so he just goes ahead and goes, okay, you know what, you've done your part, I'm going to do mine. And he picks her up and brings her up to the top level, which we can see as enlightenment or true stability or wholeness, where he then begins to work with her one-on-one as an equal. Now, this is pretty much how I see the spiritual world. When you first start working it, you are working it, and the spirit on the other side is going to want some proof that you're actually serious. And this is why whenever you hear people doing, oh, shall we say, oh, great goddess, make him love me type spells, this is why you imagine the spirits on the other side are going, oh, not another one, right? Or give me the winning lottery numbers. Oh, not another one. You imagine that's what you get, right? Okay. Then the second level, when the spiritual world sees that you're willing to put forth effort, it's willing to teach you how to make it happen. So once it's sure of your intentions and your drive, it will then instruct you how to do it. And then the final level is, okay, you're obviously doing your part, now we're going to do our part. And between the human and the spirit working together, enlightenment and wholeness gets done. Now, I'm using the word spirit here very generally, because depending on what your religious beliefs are as you listen to this story, you can see the spirit as God in the transcendent Judeo-Christian sense. You can see it as a personal spiritual guide. You can see it as an ancestor. Whatever it is on the other side that's assisting you, this is pretty much how I see it working. And I have that view simply because I don't know many people that have, just demanded that God give them something and it work. It doesn't work like that. And even in the Judeo-Christian mythology, you don't see people demanding something of God and God just going, okay. No, it doesn't happen that way. Typically, God wants proof you're serious. And by seriousness, I don't just mean the drive and the ambition to get something to happen. I mean the willingness to accept the consequences of what you've decided to do. See if I can think of an example real quick. I'm trying to keep it short because I'm rambling. I suppose a good example would be the biblical account of... I can't remember the name's character. It's a New Testament character. Hold on. Think of it in a second. I think his name's Zechariah, the tax collector. The one that wants... I think his name's Zechariah. I can't remember. And Zechariah is a minor prophet also, but I believe the boy's name is Zechariah. He's in this tree because he's apparently a short guy and he can't see Jesus speaking to this crowd. So he decides to climb a tree to do it. And he's apparently also not very popular because he's a tax collector or something, and no one wants to be seen in his house. But he begs Jesus and his apostles to go to the house, and Jesus does so. And that's kind of the same motif. The divine wants to see you put forth some effort. To think of a Celtic mythological example, not really Gwydion and Cerdiwen's cauldron, but sort of that kind of thing. Yeah, speaking off the top of my head, I'm going to go with Gwydion and Cerdiwen's cauldron. If you've not read the myth, there's this Celtic myth where Cerdiwen is making this cauldron full of a potion to give her children ultimate wisdom and ultimate knowledge. And if I remember, his name's Gwydion at the time. Yeah, that sounds right. Gwydion is assisting her. And while he's assisting her, 3 drops or something happens, it spills out, and he ends up getting enlightened before the kids, and for some reason it ruins the batch. And Cerdiwen goes after him, trying to take revenge or get it back. I don't have the myth right in front of me, so it's not leaping to mind, and it's also late, and in true storyteller fashion, I have been imbibing. But she goes after him. Eventually she catches him and she eats him, because they're going through like an animal transformation thing. One turns into one animal, one turns into another. But in the process of trying to eat him, since he has all knowledge and all wisdom, and that can't really be destroyed, he manages to turn himself into... He manages to turn himself into a life inside of her, almost like she gets pregnant spontaneously. And when she gives birth, he ends up coming out as her child, and she has to love him anyway. And what she was trying to do, give her children all power and wisdom, kind of comes true, but not in the way she intended. And what he wanted to do, which was survive, kind of comes true, but also not in the way he's intended. But since the two are working together, they both kind of get what they want. And that's basically how I see the spiritual world. If you're going to work with the spiritual world, you have to expect that it's not all about you. Just as if you're going into a business venture with somebody, they have things they want out of the venture and you have things you want out of the venture, you both got to work to help each other work. Now, fortunately, in the spiritual world, in the spiritual venture, the things on the other side, their main goal is helping to enlighten you. And I generally have that view because of my Hermetic experience and how Hermetists in general see Hermetic magic working. But that does seem to be the intent, that God wants you to work in such a manner that you get better, and that's really its main concern right now. At least as far as humans go, because not many humans are doing that. And if more of them would, the world would be such a better place. So, yeah, I've rambled for almost 30 minutes, so I'm going to try to wrap this up. And thank you for being patient listening. But it can be difficult because it gets into questions of how do you know what the Spirit wants? How do you know which way you're being led? How do you know what kind of work you have to do? But that also goes back to the climbing of the tree. You have to climb the tree in such a manner that all that stuff, it may be hard work, it may be cuts on the shells, to use the metaphor, but all that stuff is going to get done, and eventually spiritual work gets accomplished. So, thank you for listening to Druid's Rune Legend. I think this is number 3, The Raven's Bride. Sorry I ended up rambling, but I'm still experimenting with how I want this to sound, and some of these legends I feel need a bit of explaining because their meaning is not really clear, and what I get from it may not be what you get from it. And of course, if you want to send me information later about what you get from it, that'd be great, because even though I tell these stories and think I know them, it doesn't mean I see everything in them. I might have missed something, or something might occur to you that doesn't occur to me. So I think in the future what we might do is we might split up how I do this, where I make one recording where I tell the legend and then another recording where I go into its meaning. Because I'm looking at this and it being almost 30 minutes, that's an awful long time to ask for you to listen without it being like a full structured podcast like the Druid's Rune casts are supposed to be and gradually getting towards. So there you go. The Raven's Bride, thank you for listening. Until I see you next time, I wish you health, wealth, and peace.